This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Manarino.
Hi there, I'm Henry Rossoff. Welcome to another edition of PIX on Politics Daily. Today we're going to take a deep dive into the mayor's race, specifically a brand new poll that just came out less than 24 hours ago from Siena and AARP, and it's a doozy. To break it all down, the sponsor of the poll, we have Beth Finkel with AARP of New York. Beth, we really appreciate you taking some time to join us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So let's break down the numbers here. We have former Governor Andrew Cuomo getting 34%, and then you have Assemblyperson Zohran Mamdani getting 16%, and everyone else is in the single digits. What should the takeaway be here? Because I know Mr. Mamdani is trying to say, look, I'm the only one that can bring down Cuomo. This just proves it. I have some momentum here, but former Governor Cuomo wins fairly easily. So what are you gleaning from this poll?
Well, after the sixth round, it is 50% to Cuomo. So that's the first thing to say. But the second thing to say is Cuomo seems to have overwhelming support from older voters. 42% of older voters are saying that they're going to vote for him, and they are the most likely voters. In the June primary last year, which is a presidential primary, and you get a lot of people out for that one, 72% of the people who voted were 50 years and older. But in other primary elections in previous years, there have been sometimes that 50 voters have been 80 to 90% of the electorate. So they are the most likely to show up. In fact, in some counties like Staten Island, 90% of the voters for the last mayoral primary, 90% of them were 50 and older. Now, of course, it was still a bit of COVID, so that reflects it for sure, more than a bit. But even so, historically, it's always been the 50-plus voter who decides the elections.
So Cuomo's getting the strong plurality of 50-plus voters. That's why he's so far ahead in your poll. What are the issues that this poll identified as being of top of mind for voters who are over the age of 50 and then voters at large? Let's break it down. So overall, let's start there. What was the top issue identified both for everyone and for voters over 50?
So I think all of us will recognize this one and identify with it. 94% of the people who we surveyed, 94% said it's all about the cost of living here in New York City. That's a pretty big number. And then after that, the other big number, which I think should send a chill through any politician in New York, is that 50% of them said they're going to need to move to be able to afford to stay in the city. In the long run, they can't. And they're going 50% say they're going to move. That's pretty chilling.
And we have already been losing. We've already been losing hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. I feel like the census said we had 8.8 million, and then there was updated census data that said we were more in the neighborhood of 8.5. So you see the loss of our people already. So the stats really match up what your survey found here.
Absolutely, and the people who are moving are the people who, for the most part, are more middle class. And they're finding greener pastures, or so they think. But on top of that, 68% of the voters, 88% of the voters talk about affordable housing. Well, that's not news, again, to any politician in New York. That affordable housing always ranks high. We survey people 18 years and older, so this is across the electorate that I'm talking about, not just the older voters who are saying this. The other one, which something AARP works so hard, which is to try to make sure there are policies in New York to keep people in their homes, to age in their homes where they want to age in their own neighborhoods for many, many people. 71% said they thought it was the job of the next mayor to make sure that people could age in their own homes.
This was maybe the first really reputable survey after current Mayor Adams decided he was not running in the Democratic primary and he would instead run as an independent. So this is some really interesting data, but it didn't really show a new trend. It showed Mr. Mamdani being the clear number two, but well behind Mr. Cuomo, with 20% undecided voters. Now those voters drop off in short order. Mr. Cuomo gets over the 50% threshold when you rank through. But with 20% of people up for grab, that's not an insignificant number, is it?
No, absolutely not. Because if you add the original 16 that Mamdani got, add the 20% onto that, which of course he's not getting all of it. But then again, on the other hand, Cuomo could be picking up a lot of that because of his name recognition. The other interesting part was that Cuomo also was way ahead on high school educated, where the other candidates were ahead on college or graduate degree. So that is a big part of the electorate, and that was very interesting.
Of course, oh, go ahead, please continue.
I thought, just to add in another candidate, there were Staten Island, actually, Adrienne Adams picked up a bit just in Staten Island exclusively. So that was kind of interesting that she popped for the rise in Staten Island. I'll leave that to you politicos to figure out why that might have been.
Did the poll, and if it didn't, that's okay, I understand, is an extensive poll, give any insight into what voters are currently thinking about either of the twin scandals that brought down former Governor Cuomo, the sexual harassment or the handling of nursing homes during the pandemic? Did it give any insight into how voters are feeling toward him about that? Obviously enough overcoming any concerns they might have had about that, but does the poll speak to that at all?
Not at all. We didn't ask that. We also asked about crime. Again, not a big surprise to anybody running for office. 79% rated crime and safety as very important. So again, that's not surprising. And there was a significant number, 39%, on pedestrian safety. And then every single day, we're hearing about people worrying about how they're going to get across the street. So that's something that I know it's a lower number, and yet it's pretty high when you think about all the other issues that are going on in New York. That 39% talked about pedestrian safety. Also.
No, I mean, former Governor Andrew Cuomo is one of the few people I know who right out of the gate, when he launched about a month ago, actually, pedestrian safety and e-bikes being a little bit out of control is right in the middle of his stump speech, where I know that others are not necessarily talking about that. So perhaps something to be said for those sharpened decades-long political instincts that he realizes that's a concern, because it does sound like your poll highlights that.
Absolutely.
Oh, all right. Well, Beth, that's all the time we have. I know you got a hard deadline. You got plenty to do to advocate on behalf of AARP of New York. So I really appreciate you joining us here on PIX on Politics Daily.
Thank you so much. Take care.
And that'll do it for this episode of PIX on Politics Daily. Of course, you can catch us every time or every weekday at 1 p.m. on PIX 11+. And of course, we have the big political show on Friday at 6:30, PIX on Politics, with my colleague Dan Manarino, who assures me he is feeling better. You will see him back on TV soon. We wish Dan a speedy recovery. But for now, I'm Henry Rossoff saying have a great day.